Hi, I'm Rod Hollenby. I'm a certified arborist and master gardener, and I'm going to be helping you with this tree tour today. I've always been interested in trees ever since my teenage years. After that time, I worked for tree outfits. I did tree inventories, about 25,000 trees all over northern Nevada. And I also did estimates, landscape maintenance estimates, for about 3 years. And in that situation, I had to know what tree I was looking at. And when I would see a tree I didn't know, I would go do research and find out what it was.
Hello, my name is Wendy Hanson-Mazette, and I work with the University of Nevada Extension. My official title is Extension Plant Diagnostician. I am a certified arborist and also Quell certified with the University and EPA. Today we're going to be discussing evergreens. I'm going to be looking at the trees from a homeowner and arborist perspective. We're going to be looking at the form, we're going to be looking at structure and characteristics. I will also be looking at IPM, which is Integrated Pest Management. And we're going to look at trees and know what their common problems may be as far as structure and insects.
The first tree we're looking at is eastern white pine tree, Pinus strobus. It's a feature of the northeastern fall color scheme. It's the green tree in the middle of all the yellow and red and orange trees. This tree is not commonly planted here. This is a big one for this park and for this town. An interesting feature, if you look at the top of the side of the tree, you'll notice that it looks kind of asymmetrical. And the reason for that is that the prevailing wind direction is from the left of the picture. And so that's why the limbs up on the tree look curved. How do I know that this is an eastern white pine? Well, I know that it's a pine because it has needles arranged in bundles. There can be 1, 2, 3, up to 5 needles in a bundle. This is a white pine that has 5 needles in a bundle with a sheath that encompasses the 5 needles. If you look at the leaf, it's very long and very thin and may have a gray-green cast in a lot of cases. Another feature of white pines is that they have long, thin cones. Eastern white pine has a little bit thinner cone than some of the other white pines. They're about 6 inches long by about maybe 1.5 inches wide. That's how I know it's an eastern white pine.
I'm going to look at a white pine right now, and one of the things we want to note on this white pine is it has what we would call more of a geotropism in the top of the tree, where prevailing winds have caused the tree to have less branches on our west side. That is not something as an arborist that you want to try to correct. It's important to understand the environment the tree is growing in. The other things we want to look at is this tree is quite large and may not be suitable for a homeowner's yard. It is a white pine. They require more moisture and they will get large. The tree is also showing that it has yellowing needles on the interior. And as a pine, it does lose needles every year. In this case, this tree is only holding last year's needles and it is losing everything prior. It's fall. This is going to be expected. You can also see it start in summer. We're also going to be looking at the bark and the trunk taper. I want to show you what a good, healthy tree looks like growing in an environment without obstructions. So one of the things that we would like to look at on trees is the trunk. One of the biggest things that happens is people plant trees too deeply when they're young. This tree has been planted in this park for 40 years. It was planted in 1980. Now the tree technically was probably at least 10 years old at that time, but what we can see is the bark is very fissured. It was planted properly because we can see a nice trunk flare here. We want a taper. A properly planted, mature tree is going to look very much like a wine glass, and it's going to have that taper and flare at the bottom. One of the things about a white pine and most trees is their mature bark will be fissured and look very different from when it's young. We can see what the original bark looks like on a white pine by looking at the branches. It's very smooth, very supple, and very easily damaged by weed eaters or lawnmowers. So it's critical for trees to have a large area mulched where lawnmowers and weed eaters and people do not run into them.
This tree is a giant sequoia, Sequoia dendron giganteum. It's known as the largest tree in the world. Now this tree is only 33 years old, but it's already a big tree. It's about 60 to 70 feet tall right now, and it's 4.5 feet in diameter at breast height. Really, the giant sequoia are the tallest trees in Reno. Identifying features not only the shape, the pyramidal shape, also the leaves. And the little branches are green. The leaves that come off of them are triangular shaped, they're sharp, and they're pointed outward. There are only 3 trees like this of the 426 trees that grow here. In case that's not enough, this tree has, even though it's the biggest tree, the cones are only egg-sized. And not only are they only egg-sized, but when they fall down on the ground, they are really tightly closed, and they only open purportedly when they have forest fires. So that's how they propagate. When you have several hundred cones a year and the tree lives several hundred years, you don't need to have too many cones opening.
So we're looking at a giant sequoia. One of the things you'll note about this tree is that it's very large. It's technically 33 years in this planting site. Now, depending on the size of the tree when it was purchased, it probably at least had 5 to 10 years. This is a large tree for homeowners. It has a perfect excurrent form, which is considered pyramidal, and generally does not need any pruning. You'll notice this tree has branches all the way to the base. Some homeowners prefer that they are skirted up, which means removing the lower branches. Now in this case, this tree will get much larger and the branches are automatically going to droop downwards. The thing is, you want to allow it space. The reason the tree is doing so well is it is in a park environment with turf grass, and the roots spread out as wide as possible wherever there's moisture and good soil available. As far as pests, there are very few with the giant sequoia. The main problem with giant sequoia is it is a giant and not always suitable for small lots.
So this tree is a native of the Pacific Northwest coast, all the way from California, Northern California, all the way up to Alaska. It's called Alaska cedar or Nootka cedar or Alaska cypress. This supposedly is a cultivar that's weeping. Now I say that, but I took a trip to Washington recently and I saw a whole bunch of these growing out with this weeping form next to ones that had the regular form. We looked at the eastern white pine, and the difference between pines and cypresses and junipers is in the leaves and the fruit. This is a leaf. It's what I call a spray. And whereas pines have single needles, this has a complex leaf. Very interesting shape. Also, I might point out that these are the fruits. Junipers have sprays for leaves, but their fruits are blueberries, basically. And these are not blueberries. These will turn a dark brown later on. Right now they're just ripening, so they're like a kind of a tan color. But they have this shape, which is nothing like a ball.
We are looking at a weeping Alaska cedar. As we look at this tree, we typically categorize evergreens as excurrent or decurrent. Now this tree is showing some excurrent, But you can see that it has branches that arch out and then droop. It is a true weeping form that will get large and spread out more laterally, but not predictably. It will go wherever those branches are tending to go. Now, as an arborist, your job may be to prune those back to modify the overall form. But remember, when taking up these characteristic branches, you may not get it back, so make sure the homeowner is comfortable with that pruning cut. With this weeping nature, we're going to see that we have multiple branches that almost look like different trunks, but it's not. It is still a single trunk and will be somewhat of an excurrent form, which is that pyramidal. But in this case, as an arborist looking at this tree or a homeowner considering this tree, it is a unique characteristic to this tree that it's going to have unique form and multiple branches and be a little bit odd as far as the shape it takes on. This tree will mature to around 50 to 60 feet, so it's important to give it space as far as those branches spreading out and overall height. As far as pest issues, very limited. It is an evergreen, which is very nice. It reduces many of our pests as far as beetle damage. It would be a consideration if this tree does start to stress at all from drought damage. It will be best suited in a lawn area where it can have a large root system and get plenty of moisture. As far as pruning, make sure you think twice before you do any kind of training or pruning cuts on this tree, because it may not grow that unique feature back.
This digger pine, scientific name Pinus sabiniana, is one of 4 yellow pines that grow here in northern Nevada. It's originally native to the Sierra Nevada, but the western side, from about 1,000 feet to about 4,000 feet elevation. The yellow pines all have 3 needles in a bundle, as opposed to the white pine that we saw earlier, which has 5 in a bundle. Anyway, how you tell the difference between the 4 of the ones that grow here is the color. This has a gray-green cast to it. The other way that you can identify this tree is the cones. Now, this tree has only been here for 8 years, but in a few years it'll have cones, and the cones are about this size. They're basically the largest of any kind of pine cones. They're about 8 to 10 inches long and about 6 inches wide.
Here we're looking at a digger pine. Not the most common pine in northern Nevada, but definitely a well-suited tree. One of the things to take note of on this tree is that it has not been mulched around the base, and that is something that is very important in our environment. We don't want turf grass growing up to the trunk of our trees. That can cause damage as far as our weed eaters and our lawn mowers. The other thing is this tree is going to naturally lose needles every year, so that needs to be easily cleaned up. The other thing we see with this tree is that we have another tree that is a deciduous tree that has sprouted and is now up at about the 4-foot mark. Homeowners and arborists need to consider how they're going to control that tree that is now sprouted in that area. As far as pest problems with the digger pine, you're going to be looking at drought stress. Now, in most cases, we may not see beetle damage, but we may see sequoia pitch moth, which is commonly misinterpreted as beetle damage. Sequoia pitch moth is actually a moth, and digger pine is on its list. It's very easy to remove, it's very easy to identify, but it's something you want to take advantage of looking for and know that it does not equal that the tree is in decline or stress. Otherwise, this pine has very few problems and will do very well in the home landscape and larger landscapes of northern Nevada.